Game of Thrones Season 6, and lots of spoilers. This is Staying In. This has been the first series where we're gone outside of the books. And I don't know about you guys, but it's moved at a pace which is remarkably faster than any other series. And I'm not sure if it's because we've left the books that maybe kind of the duo of kind of DB Weiss and Benioff have the ability to move forward a little bit quicker than having George R. R. Martin's tugging them back a bit. What have your thoughts been around the kind of the pacing of this series?
Well, I guess in the books they had everything to whittle down as well. There's so many characters, and he could, waffle on about whatever he wanted in the books. Everything's really interesting, but for a screenplay you have to change your, make it much shorter. So I guess now they've got no restraints. They can just focus on what they want to say. I quite like the pacing. Every Game of Thrones season is slow to begin with, and then because otherwise there'd be no big thing at the end. But it's been all right for me. I haven't noticed too much of a difference, but it's got to the point a bit quicker, I guess.
Yeah, I'd kind of agree. I feel that they're feeling a lot more free to sort of do things that the audience has wanted to see for quite some time now, and that George R. R. Martin originally intended these books to be like a trilogy, and since then, obviously, when he started it, subplots began to develop, and I think he seems the type of author, from the little I've read of his stuff, where he gets lost in the minutiae very easily, and that doesn't translate well to the screen. I will say that I know a couple of people who don't like this season, though, because of that. They've said it's played out very formulaically, like everything's been... I know without touching on anything specific, but you can pretty much guess what's going to happen. And
is that not because it's like there's less characters now too?
Well, this was my point. I was like, well, if you can't keep murdering characters, apparently you can, but you can't keep murdering characters every episode. There'd be no one left by this point. But I think it's been a tremendous series. I think there was a little bit of a lull in the middle, but I think that was understandable considering the great first 3 episodes and a fantastic last 2 episodes.
Oh, I have to say, if there was one character to steal the entire season, it was Sam and Gilly's baby. I'm sorry. Every time he was on screen, my eyes were drawn to him. He was amazing. Yeah. That was absolutely the highlight of my series was just that child.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was brilliant. I mean, so much has gone down in this series, and I think I want to just kind of look at a few little small storylines to start with, because such big stuff has happened. I think we need to kind of focus on those. I mean, we mentioned there kind of Sam and Gilly, so I think they've literally had like 2 scenes or 3 scenes for the entire 10 episodes. I did smile when I saw Sam in the final episode, because I reminded me just how happy he makes me whenever he's just such a nice character. And when he shows up and he's like, yeah, this is me. I'm the Maester. Yep. And he's got that cheeky little grin on his face. And it always makes me kind of just like, I can sigh a happy sigh of relief that for the moment, everything's okay.
That he's all right.
This is a happy world.
Yeah.
Whether or not that lasts forever, because certain things have happened in this series which have challenged me in terms of bad things happening to some of my favourite characters. What was your view in terms of what happened with Sam this series? Because he had his big showdown with his family.
Oh man, that dad is such so horrible.
He joins the list of Game of Thrones dads who are just absolutely the worst people alive.
I'm really glad he took his sword, though. I'm really glad. I'm sure that's going to come in useful at some point. There'll be a reason.
Isn't
for
that a Valerian sword? Am I
right?
Yeah,
it's Valerian steel.
So we know what Valerian steel can do. So
I'm really glad they gave him that kind of, that like Beauty and the Beast moment where she opens her eyes and there's the library. They gave him this is the entire knowledge of everything. Go, find out. I don't know how much time he's got. That's the worrying thing.
It was quite a nice thing where it says, yes, you can stay and we'll give you access to the library. And then you see what the library is, and you go, well, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good thing you got there.
Yeah.
Did anyone notice, as in that kind of shot where as it's kind of spanning up, I think in the decoration of the library, you have the kind of the orb and the kind of the symbol, which is the Game of Thrones from the opening credits. That's in the library as well.
The sun thing, yeah. And it's bouncing. The light bounces off around the room, doesn't it? So it's like a massive sundial. So even if you're in the depths of the library, you can tell what time it is.
Yeah. But I'm interested to see that. I think when we saw that, I was watching it with my wife, and she just said to me, "Okay, well, we're not going to see him for another 2 series." And it's literally just like, "Where's Sam? He's in the library. It's fine. He'll be back soon. He's reading."
At least he's safe if he's there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Well, is anyone ever safe?
Well, I guess a book could drop on his head, maybe, but
exactly.
That'd be a shit death, wouldn't it, for him?
It's funny you mentioned though, like the idea of, for the next 2 seasons, where's Sam? He's in the library. Don't worry about him. What's Gilly gonna do?
Well, she's in quite a good position though, isn't she, compared to what she was before?
Exactly.
So,
I don't think she's in a place where she's not going to be looked after. I think she's not going to go hungry or anything like that. She's in a safe environment.
Are Maesters supposed to be single? None of them that we've seen are married.
No, I'm not sure, because obviously from the ones we've seen, I mean, we had the Maester,
but I suppose
Aegon.
they've all been old, haven't they?
Exactly. We had Aegon at the wall. He obviously, I think he was, completely celibate. Obviously, he's at the wall, so that kind of lends itself to that. And we have Pycelle, who very much isn't.
But he's not married.
He's not that.
Because a lot of them are, hiring prostitutes behind marriage. But I don't know if they have to take some weird vow. I'm not sure. I don't know.
See,
if it's
these are the questions we need answered. These are the questions.
God damn it.
They've answered all the little questions. This is the important stuff. This is the stuff we need to know.
Well, are we kind of glad that he's going to be shut in the library? Because otherwise we'd have 2 seasons of, so this is what a maester is allowed to do, and this is what they're not allowed to do, and could take 2 episodes of just that.
We're just going to have just a shot of him walking out of the door saying, "Well, that's done.
Yeah,
I've got all the knowledge."
with his chain.
He has
just
a montage.
Yeah, just a reading montage.
Turning the pages.
And the baby's still 6 months when he comes out. Like, yeah, okay.
Staying on kind of the smaller plots, we saw only over a couple of episodes the return of the Hound, who I was really happy about. I really liked his character. Kind of when it got to the point when he left, I think the relationship he had with Arya really helped. I think both of their characters, they both kind of became favourites of mine through their relationship, and I think there was kind of, some people thought that he had died. I felt that he was too much of a character to be killed in that way. So I always felt the fact that he's left to die meant that he would return at some point. His return, though, didn't really feel like anything other than I feel like he's going to have a big role to play, and so they just had to bring him back in some way.
I know the fan theory is that he's going to battle his resurrected brother. They've both gone through a resurrection of sorts. One literal, while the Hound's is more spiritual, like he's a changed man rather than a physically resurrected man. So I imagine that's sort of what's going to happen eventually. But I don't know. I wasn't overly fond of the Hound coming back.
What did you do? Were you not a fan of his character, or did you think that was a good way for him to go?
I really like the Hound. I really do. But I think he's funny, and I think he's an interesting character. I just think that if the Hound was going to come back, it's sort of corrupted a little bit by prior book knowledge as well. The Hound is speculated to be alive in the books as well. But he's retired. He's become a pacifist monk who's sworn to never again take a life. And people really like that ending for him. I don't know. There was something quite satisfying in a man who's never found his a place properly, and has always been surrounded by violence, forsakes violence and finds peace. Whereas here, it's like it's teased that that's what he's going to get, and that it's torn from him, which is interesting. But it just doesn't.
I don't know. I feel like you can do that in a book, and you can say, by the way, he's all right now, and he's not going to kill anyone. I think if they'd just gone straight to that, everyone would have gone, "What the hell happened to make you a pacifist suddenly?" I don't know if it.
Yeah, it would have been a really strange. There'd have been no development. It'd have been just kind of, you've not shown us why you've become this.
Yeah,
and I think there was that in the episode where he returns. He has the whole episode with the kind of the preacher man who's kind of building the church. And obviously, in that point, I think that was their way of bringing in the idea of him being a pacifist, of him not killing.
Yeah.
And then they thought, well, we're not going to stick with this, so let's get out of this as soon as possible. And I think for me, that episode and probably the Hound story was one of the weakest parts of this series, because it felt forced and it felt rushed, and it felt, as I say, it felt like he has a role to play, and so we just need to reintroduce him, and here's a lazy way of doing it.
It felt very tacked on.
Yeah, like there wasn't quite enough to make it a full-blown storyline. But at the same time, I'm quite glad that they at least explained that he's alive. And you within, only about 2 episodes, you really kind of liked the monk guy, or whatever he was, preacher, the guy who decided that he used to do terrible things. And it's kind of like an AA meeting, wasn't it, for for swordsmen and stuff. And I felt like he was a cool character. And then they did their job well by, killing him. And
he was a wonderful contrast to the High Sparrow, who preaches all this, I'm for the common man, blah, 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 but underneath it all seems to be taking a lot of pleasure in ruining the lives of nobles. Like, I never really bought into the High Sparrow's piousness, whereas High Septon Ray was his name. Septon Ray, I was like, yeah, he genuinely preaches what he believes and admits he doesn't have all the answers.
Yeah, and he was killed for no good reason either. No good reason. They just come and I think that's quite a good. That gives the Hound a proper reason to now fight for something different other than just himself. And then was it the
Brotherhood?
The Brotherhood without banners.
Yeah, now they've come along and they'll sweep him up.
Do you two know the leader of the Brotherhood without banners in the book, who was teased an awful lot this season?
I'm aware. We're going into book spoilers here. I'm aware of this, and so my understanding is, because I think there were a lot of rumors when people were aware that the Brotherhood without banners were going to return. A lot of people felt that was going to be a symbol that the character of Lady Stoneheart would be returning, because she, in the books, I believe, kind of plays a role within that group, and so she when they were going to return, everyone kind of thought, okay, this is how she's going to come back, and they are going to bring her back. The fact that they haven't makes me think that actually they've made the decision not to bring this character back into the story.
Just with they're leaving it for the next series.
With what you said, Alex, about how Septon Ray dying gives the Hound purpose that he didn't have before. I actually think that's more satisfying with what they're doing than having Lady Stoneheart is a woman controlled by revenge on the Freys and the Lannisters. If he joins the Brotherhood without banners, who, as we've seen, have noble intentions, that's better for where the show's going, rather than where thing just copying the books because the books have said this and the books have said that.
He may even take over that role, not quite in the same vengeance way, but just in the way of going around now being with the Brotherhood. He may have taken that character slot, as it were, instead of being completely apathetic and not doing anything anymore. He was quite a popular character, so they may have just replaced the idea of Lady Stoneheart with a reformed Hound.
Tom, you touched on kind of the comparison with Preacher Man Ray and that's my name from anyway. Preacher Man Ray and
Preacher Man Ray,
the High Sparrow. And I think as we ended season 5, there was, I think, Alex, me and you, we discussed kind of where the storyline at King's Landing was going to go. And one of the things you were looking forward to was seeing, okay, now what is Cersei going to do? When we left her, she had just done her Walk of Atonement.
Yes.
She just walked through the streets in that hideous scene. And we had that view of the mountain had been introduced, and we had, okay, what are you going to do? And it turns out she was going to do a lot. I'm not sure kind of how much of it was planned. I think she spent a lot of this season, she spent kind of making her own internal plans and trying to work the system and being aware that she has created something in the Faith Militant that she's completely lost control over.
She's fixing her mistakes.
And so she's lost an awful lot this series. Obviously, she lost Marcella right at the start of the series because she found out about that. Exactly, and she's gone through a lot. She's struggled with Tommen. she's had kind of having the mountain behind her has given her some confidence. Without kind of, how do you guys think?
Thoughts. I can see them in your mind.
I can't think of the words now. Okay. You're making it harder.
Sorry.
So
talk about Cersei. The mountain, giving her confidence.
So she's lost an awful lot, but obviously she's also gained an awful lot in the mountain. And I think that he has been one of the most unnerving aspects, I think, of this series. What has your feelings been towards this the creature of Sir Gregor?
I'm a massive fan of Sir Gregor. I think he's a brilliant plot device more than a character, because otherwise Cersei has no power, certainly at the beginning of the series. So at the beginning of the series he's brilliant because, as proven, the Faith Militant can't forcefully take Cersei because he's more than capable of ripping off heads. But the fact as well that he represents something hideous as well. Like he's almost a metaphor for King's Landing. He's wrapped in a gold cloak, gold armor, but underneath it he's rotten and horrible and like just a hideously powerful, corrupt creature. And I think that he's fantastic. Every scene he's in, you're worried or scared that what's he going to do.
I wasn't worried. I was excited to see what he was going to do because I started to hate the Faith Militant after a while. Which is really weird because you shouldn't really. You should know that Cersei created them and you should be hating Cersei. But at the same time, like you said, Tom, the Sparrow isn't... You feel like he's not completely good himself. Like he's kind of...
I found it really interesting. I think there was a scene, where he has a conversation with Jaime Lannister in the Sept. And it was one of the few times that he kind of let his mask drop a little bit. And you saw an element of like power, like hungry for power. And you saw that and you're like, this isn't just a guy who believes in his god and feels he's doing his god's work. Either it was always his plan or the plan has developed, but he absolutely is now in a position where he wants to gain power and he's loving the fact that he is growing in power and he wants more of it. And he's become so power hungry that it made it kind of turned that whole thing around. The fact that it lost any sympathy you could have had with the Faith Militant in the fact of you understand that they feel they are doing it for the right reasons. There is no sadistic nature to what they are doing because they feel that they are following their own god. That kind of was taken away when the leader is in it for himself.
And also how aggressive they are. They just beat the shit out of anyone. And it's not okay because then Marjorie I really liked her as a character. And they torture people, and you think, what? So they lost my sympathy quite quickly.
What I think is quite interesting about the Faith Militant is, though, the nobility of the characters who we follow, who despise the Faith Militant because they say, well, you're a sinner, you're a liar, you're corrupt. But the common folk are supposed to adore the Sparrows, and we never see from the common folk perspective quite what the Sparrows do.
No, you never see the perspective, do you? Not really. I guess there's the bit where they're outside the Sept and Tommen comes out and suddenly says the king and the religion will be together and everyone cheers. I guess that's a one time maybe. Yeah. But you don't know if anyone's actually happy with it.
Yeah, all you're seeing is that basically the High Sparrow versus Cersei. That's the battle you're seeing. And you just see both of them have their own army behind them. Cersei has the mountain and High Sparrow has the Faith Militant, and they're both they are equally matched in that sense.
See, but what I really liked in the end was that the Faith, because obviously the Faith outplay Cersei all the way through. They take Tommen from her, they get rid of trial by combat, they manage to strip Jaime of being a Kingsguard and send him off to the Riverlands. And do you remember, I can't remember what series it was, but Littlefinger taunted Cersei with the knowledge that he knew about their incestuous relationship with Jaime. And he went, that's real power. And she went, no, this is real power, slit his throat. And the Kingsguard grabbed him and like took the knife to his throat. And then she went, no, I changed my mind, don't. And she went, that's real power. I think what Cersei did here with the wildfire is, again, that just on a massive scale. Like saying, you think you're powerful and you think you can play the game. This is how you play the game. And I thought I loved it as a parallel. But it's just on a...
Yeah, because that whole thing it was the start of the 10th episode that escalated fast.
Yes,
it started off just as the trial, and then it was the music. The music told me something's going on here.
Episode 10's music, just as a whole, was incredible. Everything about it. I never noticed music, but
the direction of I forget the name of the director. He did the last 2 episodes. So that was Battle of the Bastards and the Winds of Winter. And as that music that told you so much of the story without anything. Without the music, it was just a group of people getting ready to go out. That's all it was. But from the music, you knew, okay, there are plans being formed here. And then it was great to see Marjorie, and I really, really liked the character of Marjorie this series. The fact that you knew that she was playing the Sparrow. I think there was a gorgeous moment. And I noticed it. There's in the scene where she kind of confesses to the Sparrow and says, "I'm with you. I give myself over to the gods and stuff like that." And you see him take her hand, and then you see her flinch, and there's a moment where you know that she's actually doesn't believe a word she says, and it's a tiniest little thing. It's a fantastic performance by Natalie Dormer in the role, but there's a tiniest little thing, and just from that, like, she does not believe what she's saying. She's doing this because she's seen her brother and she's saving her brother. And then when I could see what was going to happen with the wildfire, you knew if that wildfire lit, what was going to happen. And I was like, no, I just get Marjorie out of there.
I know, I thought she was going to make it, but then there's a moment where she just looks at him like, what have you done? And
he looks at her and suddenly realizes,
goes, oh shit. But she kind of accepts it. There's this horrible moment where she tries to get her brother out as well. That's her goal the entire time. Is to just get her brother out, and it's all gone. And I found this one of the saddest parts really was Tommen looking out, and then he disappears, takes his crown off, and then just goes.
You know, I absolutely love that bit, because all the way through, Tommen's been, like a gentleman, a gentle king. He takes the time, and they just let the music drop. He's looking out the window. He sees the great sept collapse. He walks to his bed. You hear him take the crown off. He puts it down. He walks up. And he jumps, and you just think he took the time to take the crown off,
there's no hesitation or anything.
It's the choice. He's made a choice to do it. He's taken the crown off, but also the fact that he doesn't. There's no dramatic pause on the ledge where he leaps off. He walks and it's as if he just kept on walking.
But the thing is, the idea, Tom, you mentioned like this kind of great plan that Cersei has, but she's had to lose her children because of it. And I think she's really going to feel that. In her costume, she was very much golds and reds and greens right at the beginning, and you'll find that she's like in completely black now, very short hair. They've even changed the crown. I believe it was a silver rather than a gold now. And she's never worn armor before, and she's got these kind of, and she looked amazing. But you've kind of got, she's kind of perpetually in this kind of funeral state now. But I wonder if she kind of knew it was going to happen because of the prophecy and just thought, well, she's going to die at some point.
She shed no tears for Tommen. That's the thing. She was.
No. I thought that as well.
She tried to protect him. He was in the Red Keep. It was then his choice to jump out the window. But I suspect she knew. She was already in the black garb before he'd done it. And then, of course, Jamie comes back like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah, I leave you for 5 minutes.
And something's on fire, and our son's dead, and
you're queen.
You're queen now. Yeah, but I loved how she matched the Iron Throne in colour. That she matched the sword silver and stuff. It was just a really great moment, and I don't know why, because I hate her, but I kind of went yes.
I
think there was something kind of almost like whether you looked at the costume, because I'm glad you mentioned the costume, because the costume to me kind of felt like almost like a Disney villainess kind of like Maleficent kind of character, or kind of like a Black Swan role. And then when you saw her sit on the throne, it very much felt like I look at Sleeping Beauty and the Evil Queen and stuff like that. That's what it kind of felt like. And it was really interesting to kind of have that moment of what's your mindset? I don't know what's going on in your head right now, because
I absolutely loved the fact that she crowned herself queen of the Seven Kingdoms, which is brilliant, and sort of you are like, oh wow, cool, she's queen. But like before, when she accidentally created the Faith Militant, she's accidentally overreached herself, because surely there must be some Baratheons somewhere thinking, well, technically, if all Robert's living heirs are dead, then the feudal system means I'm in charge now, not his wife. And so she's already lost Martell and House Tyrell and Martell in the plan. The North and the Eyrie have seceded. The Ironborn have never been loyal. She's just lost the Riverlands with the phrase, she's queen of nothing. Yeah. She's queen of the ashes.
That's the kind of sadness of it, isn't it? That she finally got the throne and there's nothing left.
And it's for the first time there is a Lannister on the throne as well. Because up until now, it's been the Baratheons. It was Tommen Baratheon and Joffrey Baratheon. This is the first, as she says, the first of my name. This is the first Lannister queen, Lannister royalty. And as you say, she's actually queen of nothing. It's a false crown that she wears, because she owns nothing.
Even Casterly Rock, Jaime is the rightful heir to Casterly Rock. Now Kevin's gone, and he's no longer Kingsguard. She has no legitimacy and no claim, and you feel that when Daenerys arrives, all of a sudden there's going to be so little support for.
How is she? I don't understand how they're going to deal with that. The amount of ships and dragons and everything, and Tyrion knows that there's wildfire underneath there. He knows where not to go.
She'll have a plan. I can't see a successful plan, but I think she'll have a plan.
Now, I was talking about this. So the part of the prophecy is you'll have 3 children, they'll die, and you will be queen for some time. Now, was there a part in there that was but you may meet your end at the hand of your brother?
She will die at the hand of her little brother.
See, because I suspect that could be Jaime.
Yes,
not
I think it's
Tyrion.
Jaime. Yeah,
because I reckon she might have gone too far.
There is I think a similarity between Queen Cersei and the Mad King.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing, and that's why when it links into that, and you kind of saw when Jaime arrives and he sees her crowned queen, he knows what she's done. He knows that she's used the wildfire, which is the thing that forced him to kill the Mad King.
Yep. Yeah.
That was what turned it. He refused to let the city burn through wildfire, and yet the love of his life, in this series, he has professed the fact that she's the only thing that matters to him. She's the one who has actually done this thing that is abhorrent to him, that caused him to kill the king before. So will he be forced to do it again? Probably that's what he's thinking at the moment.
Well, I kind of think I speculate that Jaime will be the one to end Cersei, but I think it's quite nice that the episodes before we saw him with Brienne, who, whether they I don't know if you heard the interview with the guy who plays Jaime, but he says that he plays it that Jaime's in love with Brienne. He just won't ever admit it to himself.
Yeah, I did notice the little bit, and then you kind of want them to.
Yeah, and I thought there was a real sadness in the way that he comes in, having just said goodbye to the real love of his life, and comes in and sees Cersei.
I think he loved Cersei. I think he did, but what she's done, she's gone so far.
Yeah, I don't think he recognises her anymore.
No, he'll probably take both of them out or something in one final embrace or something.
Her only redeeming feature was her love of her children.
Yeah, and now they're gone. She kind of killed one of them as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You say she loved her children, and yet you saw such lack of emotion.
I think she knew by that point, though, didn't she? She'd made her mind
broken
up by that point. Yeah, just really terrible. And actually, they keep going on about how each other is the only one that's really important to them. And I think actually by that point, it kind of maybe superseded the whole kid love thing. Because of course, Tommen kind of betrayed her as well. So
yes, I think there was one. I think there was one aspect of Cersei that you kind of supported, and that was where she had captured the shame woman, the woman with the bell.
See, now that
shouted shame for her walk of atonement.
See, no, I thought that was where she crossed the. That's what she just burnt down the Great Sept and killed Marjorie and the High Sparrow and all those people. For me, when she strapped the woman down to the table and was like, "Oh, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to let my zombie, hopefully just torture you." But as so many people have speculated online, the Mountain was famous for one thing, and it's not a pleasant thing for a religious woman.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I heard that as well. I don't think he would. Because he stood there, right? He stood there over her, and he's not moving, and she starts screaming. Do you think that he's just so horrific that she starts screaming?
I think that's what it is, and I think it was very much. I think when that scene started and you saw her tied to the table, and when she has the wine, she's pouring the wine over. There is an element of you that's quite kind of, well, you've done horrible things, Cersei, but you know what? She did horrible things to you. Well done for getting your own back. And as you say, then she calls in the Mountain, and you realise that basically she's going to become the Mountain's plaything, on whatever that means.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean anything good.
No. Yeah.
And whether that's through torture or rape or anything like that. And it's, as you said, you're not going to die for a long time. I agree. That was a moment of, I get you want to get your own back, but this is some other kind of evil, psychopathic, Ramsay Bolton style shit going on.
Yeah.
That
definitely.
Yeah. I was wondering if, it was his face that was making her scream initially.
I don't think there was anything necessarily that he did there. I think it was about, she knows what this means. She can see because he's taken the helmet off, and you only get like a faint glimpse of the fact that he's just completely disfigured and discolored and everything like that. And it was, you couldn't help but have a tiny, tiny little smirk as Cersei leaves, saying shame.
Yeah.
Shame. Yeah. You can't help. It's a horrible thing that she's done, but you kind of go. Part of you inside kind of goes, "Well done." Well done.
It's like you've got your own still back. Want Daenerys to win, but also well done. For now, sit on your throne while you can. Enjoy
it while you can.
Yeah, and she has wine in her hand, doesn't she, as well? She finishes off the wine or something as she
Always.
goes. There's I see what you mean about the kind of possible mad queen thing happening. That could be quite cool.
We talked before about the fact that in season 5, Bran was nowhere to be seen. We'd last seen him when he finally found the three-eyed raven, and so this year we got a view of a much older Bran as children grow, and we started to understand about what the three-eyed raven was, and I think also it gave a great opportunity to fill in lots of blanks. I think especially blanks around Jon Snow.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts around the concept of time travel and the concept of using this kind of power for the exposition in the past?
I really liked it as a way to fill in the blanks, but I thought it was more interesting for what it was used for, like the promise almost that you can't change the past, and then we find out, well, that's true, but you can have an impact on the past.
I think time travel is always a really risky thing to put into any kind of show. I think if it's ever going to work, it has to work in the way that I think Game of Thrones have gone down the route, whereby what happened in the past happened in the past, and if you go back and change something, you're not changing something. That's how it always was, and so you can't change the present by anything you do. All you can do is basically create what has already happened. And so maybe we will see certain things. I don't think, based on kind of where he's going, kind of in the time periods, that he's going to be affecting anything specific to the storylines we've seen. Maybe things in the mythology he may have an impact on that will obviously maybe play into it. But I did want to do one thing. I think this is vitally important when we're talking about this. Because I think it was the end of season 6, end of episode 6 of season 6. We lost someone, And I remember when we had our last conversation, I did say that one of my favourite characters was Hodor because he gave me happiness. And what I'd like to do now, and I have to say that the demise of Hodor was absolutely my saddest moment in Game of Thrones.
Did you cry?
I didn't cry because I'm a manly man, but
I bet you did a little bit. Just a little bit.
It's the closest Game of Thrones has ever made me cry. But what I'd like to do now is just take a brief moment of remembrance, of silence, of solitude, to just remember Hodor. Thank you. I think that was. Thank you for that. I think that was necessary. I think. I honestly believe. I think he's a loss to the series, and I think the reveal of I'd never even considered why he says his name. It was just a thing. I'd never even thought that there was a reason for it. But when you find out the reason for it, it's heartbreaking.
That blew my fucking mind. That episode.
When you first see kind of, you can overhear kind of in the background the Mira Reed shouting kind of hold the door, and then I remember just realizing as she's saying hold the door, saying, well, that sounds like that's why his name is Hodor, because she's screaming this now and hold the door, and it just kind of blends, and it was seamless. And what could have been a really cheesy,
oh my god, yeah, it could have been.
It
so
could have
crap,
been really cheesy and really unlike. Oh, really? That's what you're going to do?
Yeah.
It was so affecting.
Because
that
kid who played the young Hodor had to not only like have a seizure and say hold the door. He had to
realistically blend it.
Seriously, yeah, and not look. Could have looked ridiculous, but he brought that even more home for me, I think. And then it's cutting to this poor older Hodor who's getting like ripped apart, and you're just like, oh my god, it was horrible.
It was. I genuinely was devastated when that happened. We've lost a lot of people on Game of Thrones. We've lost a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Hodor was a giant loss.
He was in every single way.
They did it justice, though, I think.
Yeah.
The idea though as well that like, did he always know that was how? Did he see this? That's how I die, and is that what broke him?
I don't think he did. I think it just happened, and then he never really knew.
It's just.
But he did it anyway.
That's not. I read the scene that like his mind was broken partially from the stress of time travel on being warged into, but also the idea of that's how I die. And like knowing that, and sort of some horrible. Maybe I've gone too dark with it, but just the idea.
He would have known. I think he would. The point is, he just did it anyway because that's what he had to do, and he's being told hold the door. How it all connects, we don't really know. Do we? We don't quite know yet.
I also was like, I'm clearly slightly confused on this because I also thought that Bran forced him to warged into him and forced him to hold the door.
No, he doesn't, because Bran is just in his own form watching the seizure happen back then. He doesn't actually walk into.
I mean, it is. I think the blend of Bran being there on both sides that is causing the cross between the old and the young Hodor. I can't talk about it.
Oh God, it's so sad.
Is it too soon?
Too soon. It's too soon
to try and get Bran out, and the fact that they just keep walking into the nothingness, that's quite sad as well. The fact that you're there, like they could, for all you know, they could die anyway, even though Hodor's holding the door. But the point is, he's fucking holding it. That was, oh my god, it was probably the best death of the entire.
If Hodor's going to reduce us to tears, should we talk about the slowest moving plot line since Daenerys trying to get across the sea, the White Walkers, the world's most idle threat?
Well, winter's finally come, so
winter has finally come. But as we found out beyond the wall, and I thought this was really interesting, Benjen Stark offhandedly, who also came back and led my dad to go, who's that? I don't think the reveal of Benjen Stark was one of Thrones' best.
Well,
I liked it.
Saved Bran's ass, I suppose.
It was cool.
I knew he was going to come back at some point.
Well, his character does play a larger role in the books. In the books, there is a character called Cold Hands, who is kind of a a protector, but it's never. I don't. In terms of the books, it's never been revealed that he is Benjen Stark. It's always been assumed without.
He's been explicitly said he's not, but George R. R. Martin is most likely lying now, people think. But I did think it was really interesting that he says the dead can't go beyond the wall. There's more to it than just ice and brick,
And
which I think has been
I can't either.
Yeah,
I'm not dead.
Which I think has been hinted at before, that there's something more to the wall and its importance of standing. But I can imagine that it set up in my mind season 7, Daenerys arrives, a battle amongst the living, completely forgetting the wall, and the final season then being, well, at the end of season 7 the wall comes down, the final season the living versus the dead at last. But I find the White Walkers, I love them. I love the design. I love the design of the whites. I just wish they do something like beyond, there's nothing really they can do. I understand. It's just, it would be, I don't know. I'm a bit over it.
Oh, right. I see what you mean, because it has been so long, but I guess we saw some of their power in when, is it season 5 where Jon has to run from them?
Yeah, that was the
season
hard home.
Rise Up. That's amazing. And I guess you have to, they're holding their best card, really, because if they blow everything now, then it's like, we can deal with them.
Yeah.
There has to be, I think you're right, I think the wall will probably come down at some point, because as soon as Bran comes across, like, he's got that mark on his wrist.
Yeah.
That's probably going to do something. If the guy can teleport to him as soon as he knows where Bran is,
they're saving all their budget for the next series for the wall to fall. That's their budget for the next series.
Because they're going to have more dragons. They'll have the whole army of men plus all the White Walkers coming over.
Good luck with that budget, guys.
It's so big. But I think I like the idea of that. The sort of fire and ice thing, isn't it? With the dragons coming, and then the idea perhaps maybe Jon now that we know his heritage, he might be in flames at some point and then like walk out of them and be fine and be like, hey.
We know half of his heritage. We know his mother is Lyanna Stark. What we don't know, we don't know explicitly who the father is. We all assume we know.
I think it's pretty obvious.
He's a Targaryen, isn't he, really?
Well, that's the assumption.
He's a Targaryen.
It all makes sense. However, they were very clear to not reveal that.
Yes.
It could... Exactly. The conversation was had where Lyanna tells Ned who the father is, but for some reason, the audience aren't party to that.
Yeah. So do we think Bran heard it?
I think so. The look on his face made it seem like, he knew.
I love the bit with the baby, and then it just cut to Jon.
Yeah,
and that was a hard cut. I thought it might morph or something, but the cut was and it was the music again. I've been listening to the music today. It was just so good. Yeah. It does everything. It does half the job as well. It's amazing.
One of the smaller stories, but I think very important, and I think with a fantastic ending to the story, was in Bravos with Arya, training to become an assassin. We joined her at the start of the series, and she was blind. She was a beggar on the street. She was faced with what can only be termed kind of a waif who's also like a Terminator. I think that's how I viewed her, because it was very much kind of. It's where Arya runs away from her as fast as she can, and yet when she walks, she can still keep up with her. It's that kind of creepy Terminator-esque thing of just walking behind someone and yet always being 3 steps behind them or something like that. We now know, we have Arya now. She has been trained as an assassin. She's been trained up until the point where she still remains who she is, but she has the skills of the assassin, which I think we can all agree is exactly where we wanted her to get to. We didn't want her to become a girl with no name. We wanted her to stay as she is. We wanted her to stay Arya Stark, but have all the skills of being the assassin.
But was that the point, though? That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering because he kind of smiled at the end. I think the point was whatever happened, somebody had to be killed. Someone had to be killed because she didn't kill the first person in the first place, and that she just assumed it had to be her until right at the end when survival kicked in and she killed the other one. And I don't know if his smile was, well, at least she's made a decision, or if his smile was he wanted her to be Arya from the beginning. So I don't know what that was.
I thought it was interesting that the waif, like all the way through, we've been told, oh, you know, a faceless man must be no one, you know, and yet it's so clear throughout that I'm going to butcher his name. Is it Jaqen?
Yeah.
Jaqen, the waif. The waif wanted to kill Arya. There was a you know, she was a pleasure in what she was doing. It wasn't. Well, the many-faced god needs a face. It was, I want to do this. Yeah. Jaqen, regardless of what we saw last season when we found out, you know, anyone can be Jaqen, definitely had an attraction of sorts to Arya. You know, like, he liked her, and I think that smile at the end was, you were never going to be no one. You know.
Well, she saved his life, didn't she, a long time ago? So I think he was quite pleased that she survived. Really. I don't think I found the whole storyline a little bit of a mess because it was disjointed, and you kind of still don't really know what the hell's going on or what the rules are.
There was a few moments that seemed a bit strange, whereby, say, she'd been doing all this training, and then once she'd escaped, she made silly mistakes. She would just be wandering around the town in the middle of the daylight.
Yeah, that
knowing
trusting an old woman that comes at you. I mean, come on, she's just been told to do that to other people.
Yeah.
That was a bit stupid. I really thought she was going to go and train kind of more swords, like down the swords route, because she had needle and water dancing and all that sort of stuff. I thought she was going to become badass with weapons, but she's kind of, that's not really realistic in my head. I'd like that, but actually she's only 14 or less than that. She wouldn't have the strength to do it properly, so she has to rely on subterfuge instead. So actually it's going to be far more better for her to be able to be invisible and kill whoever she wants, rather than what I had in my head, which was this kind of Brienne type person who'd be able to, you know, kill people.
I can see Arya arguably becoming one of the deadliest characters in the entire show because of the skills that she has and the ability she has to be both a faceless assassin and be a person who has revenge and all that stuff and has kind of the will that she has. Absolutely, she's becoming one of the most deadly people in the show. I think, for me, her storyline did kind of stagnate a little bit. You had lovely moments like you'd spent so long when she was blind trying to train and being beaten to a pulp by Terminator waif. So the moment when the waif has chased her to her room, and there's that moment you realise you're in a dark room, and when she just flicks out the candle, and it's just perfect, and suddenly all those montages that we've seen make perfect sense, and she has been not necessarily in complete control, but she has been smart enough to say, okay, I need to use this to my advantage. She's going to come after me. I can't stop that, so how can I... If I don't have the ability to be faceless like she does, I need to bring it back onto my side. If I can get her into an environment that I have the power, doesn't matter what face she has, if she can't see, she can't see. And I think that was what was a really nice touch. And I'd have to say, don't know about you guys, but I think possibly my highlight for the entire season, mainly because I did not see it coming, was her killing of Walder Frey. I absolutely...
Well, the finger in the pie.
Yeah, I did not see that coming.
See, I loved it because I hate Walder Frey, but I was just left like, did the Faceless Man let her take some of the faces? Did she get the face herself?
I think you get the ability, don't you?
I think, don't you have to use the... I've always been confused on this.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is why I'm like, I don't understand. Do you take a blimmin' face off?
I think she just took a couple for safekeeping.
He wouldn't have let her do that.
Yeah, she was like, I'm going to take these faces, by the way. I'm sure you can find some new ones. Like, I agree, Dan. I think that Walder Frey, Frey pie was brilliant, and I also quite like the idea that Arya not only apparently maybe stole some faces from the Faceless Man, also taught herself how to kill his sons, taught herself how to bake, made them into a pie just to give it to him. And she was so excited. If you watch that scene, she goes, "They're here, my lord." And he's like, "Where?" He's not even eaten the pie. And then he goes, "They were in the pie." And then he's like, "Ugh." And it was like, she got so excited, she didn't even let him eat the pie. She was like, "Oh no, they're in there." Haha.
I think in all the joy of her taking off the mask and then having the line of, "I want the last thing for you to see is a Stark smiling down at you," I think the joy of those lines made me forget any kind of inconsistencies around where she got the face from and all that stuff. The logistics behind killing and carving two grown men without anyone seeing, all that logistics kind of went out the window because I was just so happy to have that moment. And it absolutely, because as I say, I just didn't see it coming. Even at the point where she's saying, they're here, and at the point where he realises they're in the pie, it wasn't until she went to lift off the mask that it just suddenly dawned on me, oh my god, this is Arya. Of course, we haven't seen her. I thought she was on a boat somewhere. Obviously, in fast forward season 6 Game of Thrones, she can get anywhere she wants very, very quickly.
I like the fact that, as you said, Dan, he only kind of realised it right at the end, which means he didn't even really give a shit that his sons were in a pie.
Yeah.
Not really, until he was like, oh god, I'm going to die. Also, why is the old guy always on his own? Like, he was completely on his own. I guess the Freys are so shit, aren't they? They've got no guards, no nothing, and they're on top of the world right now. They think nothing can hurt them.
Yeah, the Lannisters are there. They have all these people around. The Lannisters are in support.
To, he'd be on his own, wouldn't he? There was that slight thing where I was like, he'd probably have someone in there, but I'm not gonna choose not to pay attention to that because Arya managed to get another kill. How many is that now?
I'm wondering, does she have, other than Cersei, does she have anyone left?
She's got the Hound.
Yeah, but she thinks she's dead.
I think the Hound is no longer on the list. And I think wasn't there a conversation with Jaqen where she no longer read out the Hound's name or something on her list. I'm pretty sure he's no longer there because of the relationship that they had.
She either thinks he's dead, or if he's not dead, she's already done what she could. If that makes sense, like she's already done the killing blow, and if he survived that, then he's probably worthy of not killing. If that makes sense.
Marine. What can we say about Marine except for I could do with I like Tyrion, I like Grey Worm, and I like the translator whose name I can never remember.
Oh yeah.
I didn't. Their scenes with this year were filler. Pure filler.
It was nice. I liked that filler.
It was nice. I was disappointed though because when we talked before, Alex, I kind of said I was really looking forward to this series because my favourite Tyrion series was season 2, and that was because he was Hand of the King, he was in control, he had power, and he was really great in that role. Great, kind of really confident. And I was hoping that this series he would fulfil that same kind of role, and so be that kind of same kind of cocky character which he's so brilliant at. But as you say, in the absence of Daenerys, it was left a filler, and it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fun.
He's in a different position though, isn't he? He's terrified. He was a bit cocky before when it was just his spoilt nephew that he had to deal with, and now he's got an entire city that's not his home, and he doesn't quite know yet if he trusts Daenerys. He does later, but not that part. I think his kind of humour has gone a little bit from killing Shay. Something's been broken a little bit inside him.
I think he has become more serious. There is the element of the wine swilling, joke telling. I mean, he hasn't had a woman in a long time. I mean, maybe that's where his power comes from.
I think the Dothraki thing was good. Like the whole you've got to go backwards to go forwards thing with Daenerys. I thought that was really well handled, and her taking charge of the Khalasars, really, really, really well done.
That was so cool.
I think
that was awesome.
But the whole, and I know, and Tyrion is one of my favourite characters in Game of Thrones, but most of the Marine stuff, including Daenerys, once she got the Khalasar, before the War of Slavers Bay, like that moment when Daenerys gets on Drogon at the end of I can't remember which one it was now. She gets on Drogon and she makes a speech that you'll all be my Carls and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, yeah, didn't we just do this?
Yeah, no, I had exactly the same feeling. I knew exactly what you mean. It was like it still didn't move the story on. Mm. It was like you'd just seen maybe 5 minutes afterward. Happened the last time.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And then we also... we had Tyrion go visit the dragons, and I was like, right, well, this is going to pay off in a big way. And it still may in the future, But again, nothing came of it. It was just.
Did you hear the theory about Tyrion being part Targaryen?
Yeah, I don't.
Which I don't. I think that's just people wanting it to be, rather than actually being any evidence for it.
In the book, there's a lot more evidence, because in the book he's described as he has an eye that's described as completely black. And his hair isn't gold like everyone else's. They describe it as so blonde it's silver.
Oh, right.
And someone references that the Targaryens, sometimes their eyes, because the Targaryen eyes are violet from the book, they were so purple sometimes they looked black. So that's people's that's the foundation for that one.
I'd be surprised if that was a path the story went down. Because as I say, I don't think you do that with two characters. You can do it with Jon Snow. I don't think you can do it with Tyrion as well. I don't think Tyrion needs that for his character.
He doesn't. His character is he's now the hand of the Queen. And he's going to be put back into that position that you enjoyed so much, Dan.
Yeah.
And I think then we'll start to see a bit more cockiness. I think probably one of my favourite scenes was him talking to the dragons. I think that was a really sweet scene, and I don't think it means he's part Targaryen. I think it, like he said, they're just intelligent enough to understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
I really love that bit.
I love the sack. I love the sack of Meereen. By the way, like the slavers all arriving, and Daenerys like essentially being like, "No, this is how I'm going to take Westeros. It's going to take about 5 minutes with my dragons." Oh, except for one thing, those dragons tunneling out the pyramid at that exact moment. I was just like, have they been tunneling since Tyrion sort of took the chains off, or
stop questioning all the logic in this, Tom.
I really did. I love this series. I really do, and I loved the whole Meereen thing, and I loved the Greyjoys joining up with her.
Yeah.
I think that there'll probably be I think they'll neuter Dany slightly at the beginning of next season with a fleet battle between the Greyjoys and the and Dany's fleet, just so she doesn't quite arrive with. She's got more. I think they've referenced her having more troops than Aerys the Conqueror did when he first landed. Like, I think they'll neuter her slightly, because otherwise it is going to be like, how's anyone supposed to beat her?
She does have a great conglomerate of people behind them now. I mean, she obviously has Yara and Theon, and there's a lovely dynamic between Yara and Daenerys. That was really, really nice.
Yeah, that was great.
That was just a really... that was the most chemistry that Daenerys has had than any guy she's been with.
She every time she was looking at Theon, it was just like, yeah, okay, fine. And then she'd look at her, and it was like a connection of finally
a powerful woman. Here's someone I see a connection with. Right, I think all the men around her have all been subservient to her, whereas here's a woman who absolutely feels she's just as powerful as her, and that was a really, really nice thing to see.
Do you not think that with all the armies, and instead of nullifying a bit or kind of nerfing her in a way, do you not think her battle is going to be with the White Walkers?
I do, but I think there is going to be a struggle. I think there's going to be a struggle against the living as well.
Right? Yeah.
Because ultimately we care about. We don't. The White Walkers are a nebulous threat right now. We don't know what they want beyond the wall coming down and killing and resurrecting whites. I think it's been made clear that they are intelligent and they have their own culture, but I think that we're going to be far more interested, at least next season, in seeing characters who we've watched over the last 6 sort of battle almost. I think that it would be cheating almost if Daenerys arrived and then it was like, oh, the White Walkers are here.
I think it's interesting that basically no one other than Jon Snow really knows about the White Walkers. When we talk about Daenerys, we talk about Cersei, we talk about King's Landing or Meereen. None of them even know that they exist. And obviously, the White Walkers have been around for 6 seasons, and yet some of the key characters have no idea. And I agree with you. I think the next series will be about that battle for King's Landing and that colossal battle we've been waiting all these years for. But I also reckon by the end of the next series, it will be snowing in King's Landing, and there will be an understanding of what the people have been saying up north isn't myth.
Oh wait, it was true.
Yeah.
What the hell? My problem is that, of course, it was never going to happen because they had to make 6 seasons, but I really wanted Joffrey to suddenly face the White Wall. Like I wanted him so bad to have to face this threat. The fact that the guys in King's Landing have no idea. They're just busy playing their own games, and I can't wait till winter comes to King's Landing. Can't wait.
But who else has Daenerys got? No, she's got Theon and Yara. She's got the Martells. She's got the Tyrells.
House Tyrell.
She's got a lot of people who hate the Lannisters.
The Second Sons have been left behind, haven't they?
Oh, I love that bit with the 3 slaver guys. And they pushed one forward and was like, "It was him, he's not part of us." And he knelt down, and then Grey Worm just goes straight through. That was fantastic. She's got the dragons as well. She's got so many people. The Unsullied.
She was gonna try and take Westeros with Khal Drogo's Khalsar. She now has all of them. Khalsar. Yeah, so it's also as well like the Seven Kingdoms. There's only one kingdom with so Castle Rock still has its army, the Lannisters. Littlefinger still has the Knights of the Vale. They're relatively intact. The North is in tatters. The Riverlands are in tatters because, the Freys and the Tullys. Like, there's not that much left in Westeros to fight back against
that's
her.
What me and Dan were saying though as well, that they everyone's trying to get after this Seven Kingdoms idea, but actually there's not really much left of it. There's not going to be many people left either, I don't think.
Is it going to just be one of those things where we've waited 7 series for the big battle, and it's literally she's going to walk up to the gate and they're going to go, "Yeah, fair enough, you got us. We can't fight you. Yeah, it's just thrown just over there. Turn left, second right."
Well, didn't she have? Oh, hang on a minute. When she was in the Mage's Tower, she was walking in the throne room and it was all snowy. Do you remember?
It was indeed.
I get the feeling that she's going to finally get there and winter will have come and nobody will be there. And it will be like a kind of bitter victory of, I got here, but I
have the throne, but I've been fighting the wrong war.
Yeah, almost as if now, well, what do I do now kind of thing. Which would be really sad because that would suck. She's come so far to have that happen.
I think, like Dan said, though, I think there's a really interesting thing. So the big battle, okay, we're looking forward to it, but it's going to be interesting to see how she maintains that reign, because she's already said, the Ironborn have said, "We'll give you what ships we have, but we want freedom." And she went, "Well, you'll respect the sovereignty of the Seven Kingdoms, and by the way, you're going to stop reaving." Yara's like, "Well, that's all we've ever known," and she's like, "Yeah, but I said you're going to stop it." And there is just this, she's never lived in Westeros. She doesn't know the customs. Like, I think there's going to be an interesting political battle just as much as a physical one.
I think you underestimate how persuasive a dragon can be. I really do.
Yeah,
that's also true.
Is it Yara? I think they had an understanding, those two, and I think she gets it. She said, "Oh, well, that's our way of life," but you know what? Time for a change. Time for a queen of the Iron Islands as well. So I think actually they'll bite their tongue when that happens. I don't think they'll I don't think you'd cross someone who has 3 dragons and a huge army.
I can see from where Bran is, because Bran's back at the Wall. I could see him making his way to Winterfell at the beginning of the next season, meeting up with Jon, telling Jon, "Oh yeah, by the way, mate, we're not brothers. You're my cousin. Oh, and you're half Targaryen, by the way." I can see that coming into play in quite how Daenerys reacts to Jon, because Jon is technically the rightful heir to the throne. He supersedes,
even though she is kind of the rung of the ladder up from him, because obviously I believe he is her nephew. I believe.
Yes.
Is he?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, he is.
The supposed father of Jon Snow would be Rhaegar Targaryen, which is Daenerys' brother. Daenerys' eldest brother.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's the understanding. So that would make Daenerys Jon's aunt, which sounds really weird.
Because she's supposed to be so young, isn't she?
Yeah.
But they're all supposed to be really young.
Well,
but I get the feeling that Jon is finally the sort of person that wouldn't want the throne. I think he'd be like, "You have it, please. I'm bored of this shit."
But I think that's going to be part of Jon's journey, realizing that all these people seek the throne and some are born to it. Almost like Jon is a man who people trust, Like, people want to be led by Jon, whereas everyone else has conquered and taken. And I think that's going to be part of Jon's journey, coming to terms with the fact that sometimes you don't get to choose that. Like he'd love to sit in Winterfell, but even in this episode, and I know we're going to talk about the North, he's been declared king, even though he never wanted it. It was thrust upon him, and I think that that's sort of foreshadowing what's going to happen, especially as Daenerys hasn't, as was pointed out, she's not a ruler. She's a conqueror. Like they said as much in episode 4. Like you're not a ruler, Daenerys. You're a conqueror. That's what you're good at.
She's never had any experience with ruling, though, has she? She's not long enough in one place.
She tried to rule Marine, and that hasn't gone well.
Well, she could do now,
well,
but she doesn't. She's got a goal, isn't she? She's still gotta keep on moving.
But like you said as well, she's got Tyrion. She has Tyrion with her now, so that feels like something that can help. But like I think that that is the future. That Daenerys isn't gonna. I don't think Daenerys wins the Game of Thrones. My prediction.
Over in the first few series, I think that was a question that people often ask: kind of who's going to end up on the throne. And as it's gone on, as we've learned more about the White Walkers and all bits and pieces like that, the who ends up on the throne seems to be kind of a pointless question, because at the moment, obviously, Cersei craves the power of being on the throne, same as Daenerys. There's no one else really after that throne. We may have seen elements of Sansa maybe beginning to have an idea of maybe being on the throne through the conversations with Littlefinger, but other than Daenerys, no one seems to be on after it, because Jon is all about the White Walkers, rightfully so. So the whole Game of Thrones thing, it used to be who's going to end up on the Iron Throne. I don't think that's a particularly good question anymore, because I don't think that's not the end game. The end game we always thought was who's going to end up on the throne. That's not the end game anymore.
See, well, I don't think it's the end game. I think it's still a massively important thing, because I don't think, even though we have this, it would be walk all over the White Walkers with 3 dragons. If they're vulnerable to fire, how difficult can it be? I can see there still being a game to play, because Jon's all about the White Walkers. What's Jon got? Jon's got the remnant houses left, of the North. He needs alliances, and he needs help if he's going to tackle that. Like, I can see Jon, as I keep saying, being forced to take the throne. Not that he'll ever want it, but just it will be given to him. It will be like, this is a responsibility you have to shoulder. You're born to this. And I think that's why it's still called. That's why. Well, it's why it is the Game of Thrones, a Game of Thrones, sorry, rather than anything else. But it's also that's my theory on it anyway.
The Seven Kingdoms getting split up and given to lots of different people, because I get the feeling he'll sit down and go, "Yeah, I don't want to do this. Let my sister have a go."
I can definitely see the feudal system coming to an end, because I think there's been a constant theme of like succession and like treachery just has undermined everything. Like, I think, but again, it takes a leader, doesn't it, to sort of to pass that through. And it's I think that could happen.
I think you're right though. I don't think this idea of the Seven Kingdoms, I don't think that's in existence anymore. I think people are fighting to fight what they've always fought for, which was power. But Jon doesn't really want power.
We've touched on Jon all the way through our chats here, and that's kind of because his storyline has been quite an extensive one. I mean, obviously, the earth-shattering moment at the end of season 5 was his death, and that was the point where just like the world came crashing down for so many Game of Thrones fans of this isn't possible. That's why no one thought he was dead, because it was just so insane to think he would be dead. So we started this series, and we had, I think, 2 full episodes of him still being dead. Even though the fact that he was just lying on a table meant he was coming back. And we all knew he was going to come back. And we all knew that chances are the Red Woman was going to come back. And then we had that moment with the hanging where we kind of questioned how has he come back? And I have to say, we talked before about kind of our favorite characters, and I always said my favorite characters were John, Arya, and someone else who I can't think off the top of my head who it was. Obviously not that important anymore. One of my new favorites is Davos. He absolutely became one of my favorite characters this year, because he's taken on that role of the guy who just says what he thinks, says something cool, is the uncle that you want. You want to go for a drink with him, you want to have a chat with him. He's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think once Stannis died, a kind of weight was lifted off his shoulders, and he was obviously sad, but he knew Stannis was going down a terribly dark route. And now he's he's following someone like Jon, who's a bit more, actually gives a shit.
It's an integrity and moral thing that Davos has, and obviously that goes back to his history when he was a thief and he had his kind of fingers cut off. That he has that kind of bred into him, and I think that's what attracted him to Stannis to begin with. And then obviously Stannis kind of over the years morphed into something else, and that's what he sees in Jon now. He
said something like, he raised me up from nothing, but then he turned into someone I didn't know, and it's terribly sad.
Well, my favourite thing about that Davos says this season is when he confronts Melisandre about burning Shireen, and he goes, if your lord demands you burn children, then your lord is evil. And I couldn't help but think that there's a little bit part of him that's thinking Stannis. Like that was sort of that moment of like properly like declaring for Jon, like that I was wrong essentially to trust Stannis.
But she doesn't Melisandre, when he says that, she doesn't argue. She kind of accepts that statement.
A light's gone out in her since she did that, because she's realised she was wrong.
Yeah.
And I think she does genuinely feel for that, but it kind of, that was really upsetting. That scene where she's clutching the kid's clutching the little toy, and you really want Davos to just find out what actually happened to her. So that was a good moment when he confronted her on it, and I like that Jon stood up for him as well. He could have easily gone, "Oh, I need her."
Yeah, I was worried about that.
Although, kind of, as a leader, he makes the decision to both not kill her, who is a woman who has sacrificed a small girl to be burnt at the stake, but also he hasn't kept her around because she knows she's useful. It's kind of, is that the best decision for him to make? To basically do nothing?
I thought it was quite telling that he went from a person, so obviously the Night's Watch betrayed him, or certain factions within the Night's Watch betrayed him, and he had no compulsions about killing them. He wasn't interested in their reasons. It was, they betrayed me and now they're dead. To after Battle of the Bastards, where Jon showed mercy and let Melisandre go. And I hinted at this earlier, the idea that like Jon in Battle of the Bastards goes into that sort of willing to die. Like, he asks Mel not to bring him back, and then charges out, even though Sansa's warned him not to. Ramsay's going to trick you. Like, he does all that, and then during that massive crush, there's that moment when he almost stops fighting against the swarms of people crushing him, and the showrunners have called that the true rebirth of Jon Snow. When he comes out fighting, he realizes, no, I do want to live. So I think this entire season has essentially been about Jon's rebirth and the rebirth of the North as sort of like a Stark bastion again. So yeah, that was sort of like that was my take on it, that Jon was showing mercy because Jon was Jon again and wasn't, quite as cold.
I thought it was interesting that you had the scene of Jon being proclaimed King of the North, and they kind of saying that they would stand behind a Stark as that's happening, as at the same time you're finding out that he is not the Stark that we thought he was. He's obviously still a Stark in part through Lyanna Stark, but also he's Targaryen as well. So it's not following that same route as you have Sansa, who I got the feeling is having some kind of machinations around potentially kind of sitting on the throne. She in the early series, she had that dream of being queen, and obviously that was ripped away from her from Joffrey and the way he treated her. But the idea now is, I think, being planted in her mind again by Littlefinger, And with her in more of a position of power now, and knowing how the game is played, and knowing actually what that means, it'll be interesting to see their dynamic kind of progress. Because Jon, as you say, is kind of a king who doesn't really want to be king, whereas she is not a queen. But I get the feeling that she's beginning to think, yes, like this is a future for me. I can't see, based on kind of who's kind of in place in terms of Cersei and Daenerys, I can't see her actually pursuing that, because I think that would be ludicrous for her to do that. Even Littlefinger would know that that is not going to work. Although Littlefinger, you can never rule him out. And I think I was actually quite surprised. The line that he says, where he says, the question I ask himself every time before I do something, will it make this picture that I have more realistic? I thought the picture was going to be him with Sansa, or something about Catelyn, or something like that. But the fact that it's probably one of the first times that he's said, I want to be on the throne. He wants to be king of Westeros. It's not just he wants to be in a position of power. He's looking right at the top. And I think that's interesting, because I don't think he's ever kind of outwardly said that's his goal before.
He's said before now that he's hinted at it when he said that chaos is a ladder. And he's definitely made it clear that he wanted to climb socially. But I always thought that it was far more, at least when Catelyn was alive, proving himself the equal of Ned. Like, I never saw it as a desire to actually rule, because I always thought he saw himself almost as too clever for that. Like, because he spent his entire life essentially manipulating these people to get what he wants. And I do find it interesting that he wants the throne, but I hope that Sansa's got enough sense to realize that Littlefinger doesn't have her best interests at heart. He's proven that. He gave her to Ramsay, like and that Jon, again reluctantly took the throne of the King of the North. Not because he wanted it, but because it put him and her in the best position to protect themselves and the people they cared about.
I wasn't actually surprised when he said that, because, as you said, he's always been rising in the ranks. He's always been out for himself. You can never, ever trust what he does. And I suspect he'll even dick over Sansa if he has to right at the end. But I disagree. I don't think Sansa wants the throne. I think she may have to take it, or Jon may be in danger. Because you could see, just as everyone was saying, King of the North, that Littlefinger was looking at him like, I'm going to fucking kill you if you get in my way. And she was looking right at Littlefinger. And I suspect she'd have to do it in a way to protect Jon. Because I really don't trust Littlefinger. I think he could do anything.
I don't think Littlefinger's long for this for the next season.
Oh no, I think he is. He's the guy who's there at the very end. He's the guy who's ducked every battle and done everything. But he's the guy. That's the kind of person who make it to the end. There's a reason why Cersei has survived, and everyone around her has died.
I just think that Game of Thrones villains, when they're going to be killed, because they hit peak cartoon evil. I can see that, like Alix is saying, the moment, and he's just staring at Sansa, like at the end, and he's just like that one, and I was like, yeah, next season he's going to go all in to get what he wants, and it's going to backfire, because he's played it carefully and he's played it cool, but now he's shown his hand and he is going to go full on, right, I'm a villain.
What he doesn't know is that if he's going to make a play for the throne, what he doesn't know is he has Tyrion and Varys on the way, two people who know him extremely well and know exactly how to handle him.
Exactly. I don't see Littlefinger's definitely not going to get what he wants.
I don't mean to kind of sound the awkward segue klaxon, but as you say, Littlefinger won't be getting what he wants. One character who always seems to get what she wants was one of the highlights for me was Lady Mormont, the 12-year-old girl with the on her shoulders the head of a 50-year-old battle-hardened warrior. I thought she was brilliant. I think when I watched it with my wife, she thought the kind of the comedy of it kind of undervalued it or underplayed the kind of what she was saying. But I just thought not only was her speech is amazing, but the fact that all these old guys would sit up and listen to her.
They shut up and listen. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think your wife's right at first glance, because they both, even Sansa and Jon, laugh a little when they first go into throne room. But actually, I think you suddenly realise she's not fucking kidding.
Yeah,
she's not joking around, and she's actually quite serious. And I think actually the next time you see her, you have the respect that the rest of the guys have for her as well.
I thought that there was a wonderful moment where she rides out, despite the fact she's 12, to meet with Ramsay Bolton, the biggest, most evil man in the North. And there's a moment where, one moment in that episode where they look at each other, and there's a look on Ramsay's face of like, oh, like just the briefest of moments that he's like, oh.
I don't know what to make of you.
Yeah, I really like that, because Ramsay's one of those characters who always, seems so in control. And there's just a moment where he's like, "Oh, who are you?" And I don't quite know how to play this one. Like, I loved it. Lady Mormont was a highlight.
Can we also agree that hands down, Ramsay is the most evil character that has ever been in Game of Thrones? I think Joffrey is like a petulant dog chasing after a car. Ramsay knows what he's doing, and Ramsay actively creates plans to be cruel, whereas Joffrey just was a cruel person. He enjoyed it, but he was never smart enough to make a plan which would result in cruelty. He would just...
No, but he killed people.
He killed people, but he wouldn't kind of... For example, when Ramsay killed Rickon, the way in which he did that was done for maximum cruelty. It wasn't... If that was Joffrey would have just killed him. Whereas Ramsay used him as a way to draw out the anger in Jon, and did exactly what Sansa predicted he would do.
Ramsay is definitely the most evil person we've seen on screen, because I imagine the Night King probably out-evils Ramsay,
I don't know,
10 times before breakfast. Like, I loved Ramsay's death. Not just because it was cathartic to see him, killed, ripped apart by his own dogs, but because there was that awful moment where he says to Sansa, he's like, "You can't kill me. A little part of me will live on with you," which a lot of people took to mean, "Oh, she's pregnant." But but obviously means this is the type of thing he'd do. He'd feed his enemies to his dogs, and was planning to do to Jon. Sansa, all the way back, even as late as season 5 when she married him, you can't imagine her doing that. But Ramsay has made Sansa like him. She's made him cruel. It's such a horrible thing. He's chipped away at her soul, like in a way Cersei and Joffrey never did, and I think that just cements him as the most evil person because he begets more cruelty and more evil.
There's that moment where she almost turns to leave, and then she doesn't. She watches.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have now Ramsay's gone? Do we have someone who kind of everyone can collectively get behind and just detest?
Cersei, I think now. Cersei or Littlefinger, it's got to be, surely.
I think Littlefinger will become more and more. But I think gradually, actually, the way it's moving is the only people to detest will be the White Walkers in the end. They'll be the biggest threat, finally, everyone. But I think for now, as you say, it's probably Cersei and Littlefinger. I don't think Littlefinger's going to just go out with a whimper. I think there's going to be a bigger thing.
I loved the way that this is just I understand what you're saying, like about it won't be with a whimper, but with the way the High Sparrow went out, I think it was really shocking and brilliant, but at the same time, I wouldn't have expected that. Like, I don't know quite what I did expect, but I expected more machination and stuff. So I think with Game of Thrones at times, it's hard to tell how a character will go out, if that makes sense.
I think even the actors don't really know until like the day before. And they can only speculate on what's going to happen. I think it's probably because it's a bit unpredictable, really. Because it's one of those shows where even if it's a beloved character, they'll kill them. So yeah, I think. Do you know what? I think the person that got the rawest deal out of all of this is Rickon. He's basically, he goes feral right at the beginning when he's like 3 because his mum and his dad have left and his brothers and sisters. And then he grows up in the woods, sort of running away for his life.
With a wildling.
Osher, who gets killed. And then his dog gets killed. And then he, just right at the last second, is given the last hope of running to his half-brother. And he gets shot through the chest. This is an awful existence.
Yeah, he's
really
not had any
existence.
he's not had any light points, has he?
No, he doesn't. He is not followed at all.
No.
He's one of the few Starks that is not followed really at all.
Can we mention that as sad as Rickon's death was, One's death, the giant, possibly the last giant, was heartbreaking, and Ramsay, just proving again how cruel and stupid he is, could have easily have shot Jon and decided to kill the giant.
He's not stupid though, is he? That's the thing. He's like high on power, and he's got him to a point where he's painted himself into a corner and he won't admit it. Also, I don't think he thinks Jon will kill him.
No.
I think he thinks that he's a good man, unlike me. Which is, it's the classic, Star Wars thing, isn't it? Where the Sith know that the Jedi will never kill them. They always have the power. Yeah. But Jon's a bit different now.
I think it's a thing of the fact that he's even though in relatively close quarters, he has the bow and arrow. He thinks that he still has the upper hand, and he doesn't take into account the kind of the anger and the kind of the will of Jon Snow. He doesn't comprehend that, and so Jon just picks up that shield and just charges at him, and it doesn't matter how many kind of arrows he fires. He's not going to stop. He's not going to hide. He's not going to run away. He's coming for you. And so he just has to keep throwing arrows. And he realizes right at the last, I'm screwed here.
I think you're totally right. Actually, he takes out the giant first in order to take what he thinks is the largest threat. But that's his downfall. He doesn't realize how there were wonderful moments in that battle scene. Which apparently is one of the largest or biggest scale battle scenes on TV to date. It's one of the biggest. Spectacular. Yeah, it took them 25 days for 8 minutes, which is astounding. And there are moments where I'm not sure how much the gods really play a role in this world, but there were moments where something was intervening.
Well, there was a moment where Jon was running through kind of the battle, because as he reaches the line, and suddenly kind of all the horses join him, so he doesn't get hit there. And Ramsay's firing the arrows into the crowd, and I did think nothing's hitting Jon. Is there something here? And then he starts to battle with people, and I did think, is there some kind of magical kind of protection on him? Because these arrows are falling down on all around him, and every single one is missing him.
I think I genuinely think they deliberately made it so that, the bits where there's a horse charging at him from behind full speed and it gets happens to get knocked out the way. Just every single time, he still doesn't die even when he's about to be suffocated. I do feel they deliberately made this kind of, look, there's some sort of thing at play here. I had this kind of quiet calm about me that I thought he's going to be okay. For some reason, I knew he'd be all right.
Well, I thought they can't kill him again.
That
was just my thought. They can't do it again. They've already played that hand.
Melisandre hints at it before the battle, doesn't she? She says, the Lord of Light, I think, maybe he's not the god, but definitely has power, says he clearly has a plan for you. And it did seem to me there was a supernatural element going on during that battle.
I definitely think there was. There were just times where he should have been hit and didn't get hit. But it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, a really great, and it was a battle that actually made sense. And it's a weird thing to say, but the whole
the strategy of Ramsay,
the strategy that in quite a lot of battles, quite often there's so much flamboyance that when the opposition has the chance to win, they don't take it because it's all about looking the best and blah blah blah. But actually, Ramsay was like, no, circle them with shields, poke. Move forward.
There's a strategy.
It's a genuine strategy that was used by actual, what we've had in our human history, and it's to make sure there's no honor. They are going to die. That's we want to win, that sort of thing.
It's not about just a group of guys on the field fighting each other. It's we have a plan, and what he does in terms with Rickon is he knows that John knows the plan, and so he needs to force him to just walk straight into it, walk into the trap that he's set. He won't do it willingly, so he has to force him.
Yeah. Do we think that Sansa deliberately sort of doesn't tell him because if John hadn't gone into the trap, then Ramsay wouldn't have believed that this was... Because Ramsay has to stay out of Winterfell, doesn't he? If he'd retreated back...
I don't know why she doesn't tell him that.
Well, he doesn't... Isn't it so... Because she knows John's going to react like that, and John has to... Ramsay has to believe that he's going to win. Because otherwise he wouldn't let his guys be vulnerable from behind.
I know, like, I've seen this online and people speculating about, did Sansa deliberately do it to bait Ramsay? Like, was that the trap for him? And I think there may be something in it. It's just she apologized the next episode to him for not telling him, and I also think as well, like, they mentioned that they don't have the equipment for a siege on Winterfell. Even after the battle's lost, like, they can't outwait the winter. And then one punches down the door, which I was like, so they did have the equipment, just not Ramsay being Ramsay didn't think it through. I just think honestly it was so they could have a Riders of Rohan moment. I don't think there was any story-driven purpose. I wish there was.
I think that's okay. If that's it, then brilliant. That's fine. If that is the reason, it's quite probable they had a bit of, not exactly a falling out beforehand, Sansa and Jon, but they did have a bit of a disagreement, and she sort of left feeling that she wasn't being, brought to the table. So I can see why she'd just go and do it. But if that's the pure reason, then fine, because it was freaking awesome.
Yeah, the spectacle this season was beyond incredible. Like, they've just almost every episode had something where you just watched them like, wow, that was it.
Yeah, they have to raise the bar each time, don't they? That's why they make the pacing like it is, because otherwise everyone would be, another amazing battle scene. Oh, I've seen it before.
Well, my highlight, as I've already said, was Arya's arrival and dispatch of Walder Frey. How about you guys? What's the standout bit? What was your highlight of the series?
For me, it was oh my word, Daenerys walking through the flames in the Citadel of the Khals. Like, it was a payoff I'd been waiting for a very long time with her storyline, and then it managed to drag its feet till episode 9 and 10. But it was the payoff I'd been waiting for, and I really enjoyed that moment. Either that or Hold the Door, I think, are the things that are going to stick with me.
Hold the Door.
For me, it was definitely the Hold the Door episode. Holy shit, that was one of the best TV I've seen in a very long time. I need to see it again, actually, properly and really.
I don't think I could watch it again.
I was at work and I was blubbering like a child on my lunch break. I was just like, I had to go into the toilets and blow my nose a lot and cry a bit more, and I felt really drained afterwards. I felt genuinely I couldn't really get over it for a while.
Yeah.
And TV, it takes a lot to affect me like that. It was just as a piece of editing and filmmaking and
just storytelling, just
absolutely incredible.
The way that story played out and way those revelations were revealed, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was incredible. I've not seen. I'm sure it has been in other shows, but not quite to this extent. The amount of articles written about one episode in a TV show, has that ever really been like that before?
Well, if you just hold the door, genuinely the other day I was leaving work and someone went, "Oh, hold the door," and we both looked at each other and went, "Oh, too soon." And he went, "Yeah, I'm sorry."
That was Staying In with me, Daniel Frost, Tom Percival and Alix Briscombe. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Mixcloud, Acast, Spreaker, Stitcher, or wherever you prefer to get your podcasts. And if you'd like to leave a review too, we'd be really grateful. It's a great way for other people to find out more and more about our podcast. You can also visit stayingin.podbean.com for more information about the podcast. And finally, come find us on Twitter on @stayinginpod. Thanks for listening.